Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
It is our pleasure to welcome you to a two-week series with personnel from Spokane, particularly recognizing a very outstanding program at Gonzaga University, one of the fine institutions within the Northwest. The title of this program at Gonzaga is the Leadership Formation Program, and we're pleased to have the director of that program here with us today. He's both program director and faculty tutor. We welcome Dr. Dennis Connors. I also want to say to our guests that it's good to see you back in North Idaho College, where he served as the Dean of Instruction for a number of years.
It's a pleasure to be back.
Congratulations on your program. We'll be pursuing that in a moment. And Dr. Connors has brought with him two other guests very involved in that program. First of all is Vicki Kennedy. She is a teacher and principal intern at Cheney School District. And if I may call you Vicki, as I know Dennis, welcome to our program, and we are excited about this topic today.
Thank you.
And I'm equally pleased to welcome Mike Schimmel to the program. He is the Dean of Students at Gonzaga Prep. And welcome to the program. We're so happy you can be here to talk about Dr. Connors' work that you've been involved in for some time.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And as always, I'm so pleased to have regular panelist Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho. And to start today's program, Janelle Burke will introduce the first questions.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. I have much connection also with Gonzaga University because I'm an alumnus of the school. And so it's good to have you here to talk about one of the programs at the school. The program, Dr. Connors, is one that you are very involved in. It's one in education. Can you tell us what level it's geared toward?
The purpose of the program is to prepare administrators for licensure in the state of Washington. We attract students who are master's degree candidates who desire principal certification, or people with postmaster's degrees who desire certification as principals, program administrators. And then we recruit and select 3 superintendent candidates, which generally are pursuing PhD programs. So it's a graduate program designed for school leadership, particularly for state licensure in the state of Washington.
And so that we get to know the other members of our guest group here today a little better, Vicki, can you tell us, where are you in the program?
I am in the second year of the program. The first year is the integrated coursework, and the second year is the internship. And so I'm currently in a year-long internship leading towards principal credentials.
And where is that internship being served?
And I'm doing it in the Cheney School District, specifically at Windsor Elementary School.
So you're at the elementary level.
Yes.
And Steve, can you tell us, where are you in this program?
Well, I graduated from the program a year ago. I was in the first cohort, so I completed my internship last year, and currently I am helping out in the program as
You're a graduate tutor.
a graduate tutor. So
I can work with the instructional team.
I'm one of the faculty tutors.
Right.
And Dennis, tell us what's a cohort. Steve referred to that, but tell us what that means.
Yeah, Mike referred to a cohort. We each year begin a new group of students to come in, and we select, next year our target is 21 students, arrayed across 3 superintendent candidates, 2 program administrator candidates, and then the remainder are principal candidates, equally divided between master's degree students and those who already have master's degree who desire principal certification. Those folks are brought together. The application process is a rigorous process. And when they're selected, they're brought in and divided into teams, and they spend the entire first year together, as Vicki said, to go through the first, what we call the integrated core course series. Superintendent candidates have different set of courses, but they work with the principal candidates and the program administrator candidates. And they're brought together, 21 people are brought together, divided into 3 teams during the summer. And then they remain on those teams the entire year working on the case study that they inherit and learn from. So a cohort stays together for that first year, and then following the first year, they move off into whatever track that they're on. Like Vicki would move into her internship. Mike did an internship. Those who are PhD candidates move into usually their research and their coursework for PhD. Master students can elect to either do internships or they can move into their research thesis work and elective sequence and do an internship the third year. So it depends on what track they are. They have some choices. But the first year, everybody's together.
So it's kind of like your class, and you're just
Yeah,
you're together with those
it's the
folks.
class, right.
I'm sure you must become very close to the other people that are in your classes, and you probably because you're going to be with them a great deal throughout.
It's not like any educational experience I've had before, especially in that sense. You become more than classmates. You really become administrators in this fictional school district. And we've had people come in from the outside, and that's one of the first things they comment on is the closeness of the members of the cohort. So it's very unusual. It's very non-traditional from my perspective.
Just one other point about, we use the term cohort. That's kind of a technical term. Community is really what we're after. We're trying to build community among those 21 people and the tutors. There's 4 instructors that work as a team as well. And to say community is really important, that's something that we really value. It's one of the foundations of what we do. So it's more than just a class. It's more than just a group of people that spend a year together. I mean, we have traditions and rituals and all kinds of things that we do, always focusing on what does it mean to build community, and saying if we can do it here, you can do it as a leader in a building. And that's really, I mean, that's one of the bases of what we believe.
Although I've not been introduced to your program on firsthand by being there.
We can arrange that, Tony. You know.
Thank you. Dr. Connors has been generous to provide us lots of information, which we have examined prior to the program. And I'll start with Dennis, if I may, and you tell me if I'm off track. But it seems to me that there's some innovative things in your program that are unique in how we are preparing masters and PhDs or doctors of education for the field of either teaching or administration. Am I correct in that observation that you're trying, certainly I see from your work that you're incorporating the traditional basic requirements that one must meet to be a successful graduate candidate, but aren't there some parts of this program that you don't find in the traditional graduate programs?
We'd like to think so. I mean, and that's one of the things that we consciously talked about in the design of the program 4 years ago. This program is in its 3rd year. But yes, Tony, right. There are a number of things. One is we try to turn the whole graduate education paradigm on its head to say it isn't so much what we as professors want to teach them. It's what do they need to be able to function down the road in leadership positions within schools, but more immediately during this year dealing with the case study. And so what drives all their learning the first year is a case study. We created a fictional state, the state of Columbia. We created a fictional school district called the Mountain Lake School District. And it's a problem-based approach to education where they are confronted with issues that happen within, and these teams have to deal with the issues. There are legal, financial, all those kinds of things are woven into the case. So that's rather innovative. It's also team taught. There are practicing superintendents on the instructional team. There's an assistant superintendent, former principal on the team, and Mike in his capacity is a principal of a private school on the team. And then there's a university person on the team. And we team teach. We don't turn teach. We don't, you go and you do your thing in the morning and I'll come in the afternoon. We spend lots of time talking and planning, and we're there for each other. And it's we try to model what we expect our candidates to be able to do. I think that paradigm shift, the case study that constantly evolves as they make decisions, the case unfolds as they make decisions. They're written in. Sometimes they solve situations. More times than not, they think they solve things, but as usual, in what happens in, quote, real life, problems pop up, and it's because of decisions that have been made in the past, and they have to live with that. And we have simulations that are occurring all the time. Those are some of the elements that I think about in terms of these are innovative. Gonzaga's has given us a space to do this. And to my knowledge, there's no one else in the Northwest that's teaching it this way.
What you've succeeded in doing that's unusual at the graduate level is to break the paradigm and to also, graduate schools are so traditional.
Oh, yes.
You do everything the same way no matter where you are. May I ask the other 2 guests that we have with us today, both Vicki and Mike, as you've been dealing with this program, and I'm sure you have lots of reading, and you understand that you're examining different theories and philosophies, but you're not going in and having what I'd call a traditional lecture. You read and you hear it, and you take tests and some other comprehensive exams. I personally, as an educator, am very, very excited about simulations and case studies. I think they're very powerful. And so I'd like for you to share with our viewers what Dr. Connors has just talked about concerning how you have dealt with this, and what has it done for you to escalate learning and broaden learning more than the more strict education process. It's a terribly long question, but I'd just like to get your reaction to that.
Great question, though. It is definitely an innovative program, and it's not traditional at all. And when you go into it, I think educators tend to be used to a traditional program. And it is truly very difficult at the beginning because it is not traditional. I mean, you have those expectations of, what is the lecture, what is the test going to be like, what knowledge do I need to show that I know on paper.
And a lot of rote memorization with that application usually.
Right. And that is not at all what this is. Dennis talked about it being problem-based. It's very problem-based, and it's real world-based. It does have that knowledge component, which is a real important part of it,
yes.
And yet leaders need to do more than just have knowledge. They need to be able to work with that knowledge and work with people. The whole idea about relationships and working with other people. It is extremely powerful program. Like Mike said, it really develops that teamwork in the community. But it teaches you it teaches you two main things. One is you learn so much about yourself. What kind of a person am I? What do I believe in? What is my vision and my value? And how does that impact what I think about education and being a leader for other people? But another strong part is that leadership is really based on relationships, and you really deal with relationships as you're working with the problems. And part of the strong things of the simulation is it's very easy, I think, to come up with a solution to a problem if it's isolated. But when you put it in the context of, today's solution could very well become tomorrow's problem. And where do you go from here? It's kind of ongoing. It's very systemic and connected. And I think that's what the value of it is. It's not isolated learning. It's real, practical learning. And it's a powerful, powerful program.
One more point before I go to Mike with you, because what I like about this program, when you say certain things, it generates automatic questions. I think I hear you saying about this whole process is that even though an educator can become highly knowledgeable, and many of them have been over time, but sometimes administrators are criticized for lack of people skills. That's what I hear you saying, that this program says those are equally essential.
Absolutely. It used to be that we thought of principals, I think, more as like office managers and just making things run smoothly. And there's so much more to education and the people that we work with, the staff, the students, and the parents. People skills are very important. Yes.
And Mike, all this has triggered another question on the same line with you. Is Dr. Connors and his program and others involved encouraging you, or maybe insisting, that you think outside the box, the traditional box?
Lots of things are going through my head right now. I guess I'll start there and work back.
Sure.
For me, the strongest component of the program, or the most powerful component, is underlying the case and the knowledge that you might have to have regarding law or policy or whatnot to be an effective leader, is a journey of self-discovery. And what Dennis and Bill Mester, who are the leaders for my cohort, were able to do is create a space where that journey can take place. And that's very rare in my experience in education, from the K-12 level up into my graduate experience. And that's where the challenges really take place, where you're required to and pushed to question your assumptions, your fundamental assumptions about how you view the world, how you view education, how you view yourself. And that is a powerful, powerful thing. And that's a very frightening thing as well, and I think that's why this program is so difficult for the members of the cohort, at least initially very difficult, is they're being asked to do things they've never been asked to do before, which is really question their fundamental beliefs. In an environment that is caring, that's safe, I would say is loving, and so it's a place that can happen. it's kind of hard to put into words, but it's more on a visceral, emotional level that takes place. And I would say that's the greatest challenge for most of the people in that program. The academic part, the knowledge, that's easy. Anyone can memorize the questions and the answers.
These people the people we select are very good at that. I mean, they're very bright people. They've thrived in an educational academic setting. So we always start off in the summer when the cohort begins in a conversation about what can you expect to experience this first year and then the following years. And to piggyback on what Mike has said, the easy part will be acquiring some new knowledge. That's the easy part. The hard part is the unlearning of things you already thought you knew. And it's very, very painful. And one of the ways that we try to think about that is the first seminar that we conduct is on Plato's The Republic, Book 7, and we use the cave analogy. And for those people who don't know about that, Plato says they're in a cave, they're looking at the figures along the wall, there's a fire behind them. They assume this is life, but all of a sudden they become freed from the cave and they realize these are illusions, and it's very painful for them. And we read this in a seminar and we say, what does this mean about education? Or all these esoteric answers. It comes about March or April of the first year and they begin to say, we are the people in the cave. We're the ones that are forced because of this desegregation order that we're facing in Mountain Lakes, because of this kid who brought a gun to school, because of this teacher who's not performing well, whatever the issues are, we're dealing with things about us and we're realizing it isn't the way we thought it was going to be. And we're looking at the way it really is, and some people say, I don't want to look at that. And it's easier to look at the shadows. And that powerful seminar, I think it's a powerful seminar. You can disagree with me, but it's a real metaphor for and it's the painfulness of the unlearning process. And that first year, having gone through this now 3 years with these folks, the unlearning part is the real difficult part for them.
That's why I said outside the box.
Yeah,
you did so good job articulating that.
Yeah.
Janelle.
I first have to make a couple of comments. I had the opportunity to read your materials before the program, and I know you said at the first, know thyself. And it sounds like you're all talking a lot to that. The other thing is that you, in the program materials, you indicate a couple of things about which I believe strongly. One is that you cannot lead if you don't have anyone to follow. So you have to know yourself in order to be a good leader, and you have to know what makes up leadership. And the second thing is that the leaders set the tones. That I feel very strongly about that the leader in the building sets the tone for the building, the kind of education that's going to go on there. My question then is for Dennis, though. You mentioned 5 disciplines, and I noted that many students talk about those 5 disciplines. Will you share with our viewers what they are?
One of the main foundations to the intellectual part of the program is we use a work by Peter Senge called The Fifth Discipline. It's a book and work that's come out of MIT in the business world, but he talks about 5 disciplines as being really central to what Vicki talked about, the nature and quality of our thinking and the nature and quality of the relationships. Those are really 2 strong principles that we speak to. The 5 disciplines are personal mastery, really getting clear about and understanding what do you really aspire to do as an individual. Not just a job, it's deeper than that. What's your purpose here? It's like Norm Gissel talks about, I know why I'm on this earth. It's to do the kind of work that I'm doing and have the kind of relationships that I have. We spend a lot of time with our candidates talking about that from their standpoint and saying, if this vocation of administration, if you have a genuine calling, we really need to be clear about it is more than just a job. Along with that shared vision or personal mastery is shared vision. How then can you, like you say, a leader sets the tone and brings people together. How can you bring people together and say, what do you value? What kinds of things are important to you? The notion of shared vision, the second kind of discipline. Mental models. How do we view the world? What are the assumptions that underlie a lot of the things that we believe? We spend time practicing certain ways of trying to understand that. We call it slowing our thinking down, to understand the notion of mental models. And then team learning. How do people learn together? One of the assumptions one could say that underlies all of education is that people learn individually and competition is really good. That's an assumption that we really try to understand. I reject that assumption. I can't speak for my colleagues, but I reject that and say it's more powerful in a group. Minds together, focused and disciplined on something, are much more powerful than a single mind. That's the fourth discipline. The last one is systems. The notion, and again, Vicki and Mike both talked about it, the interconnectedness, how dynamic complexity takes place, even within a classroom, the tremendous complexity that goes on, and to understand that, to be able to get your mind around it. We're very good at teaching kids and adults in the Western culture very linear. Our language is linear, our thought process from A to B to C to D. But in reality, if you look at nature, it is in circles, it is related, and it's at some level a lot of things are related. We try to understand that dynamic complexity. So in a real quick nutshell, that first year is really getting in depth as we can in those disciplines, those 5 disciplines. That's a major foundation to the program.
Mike, I want to give you just an opportunity to talk about community, because I know that's very important to the prep community. They often talk about the prep community, and that idea of forming a community in the educational setting.
That's a big question. Maybe specifically as it relates to the program, I could talk about that.
Yes, that's what I need to ask you about.
Well, in a traditional classroom, you'd be sitting in typically rows. The professor would be lecturing, you'd be taking notes, and then at some point in time you'd have a test, and you would regurgitate back that information to see whether you had assimilated it. In this program, the Leadership Formation Program, that doesn't exist. It doesn't take place. I was kind of in a unique situation that I was a vice principal when I was going through this program. One thing about being in private education is you don't have to do things exactly the same way you have to do them in public education. So I kind of had the cart before the horse and was getting my principal certification after being in the position as a vice principal. And what the Leadership Formation Program does very well is it puts you in a real life situation. And we often refer to, is this reality or not? And it becomes reality. It feels like reality. And I can attest to working in a high school of 980 students and being in this program at the same time, that it was very real. And you could not do what you were asked to do in that program, run this fictional school district, unless you worked with those classmates. You were assigned a school based on your interest in where you wanted to be certified. So for me, that was a high school principal. You had members on your group that were program directors. There was a superintendent, and there were administrators or vice principals for each school in this fictional district. And you had to work with them. And if you didn't function well as a community, as a team, you weren't going to get through the material. Dennis does a very good job of making it feel like, and actually being way too much work for any one individual to ever accomplish on their own. It may be difficult for a team to accomplish on their own, and that's very realistic as well. There's always more to do than you have resources to put forth. And so it forces you to work together as a group.
So what you're saying is you can't just be authoritarian, or one person can't just be authoritarian, even though they're in a leadership role.
Right.
They can't be an authoritarian leader.
Well, we've had people try to do that, and usually the members of the cohort will rein that person back in and let them know that that's what's happening. That's kind of the mental models, or outside the box, some of the stuff that happens there. There's a lot of challenging going on from the tutors to the members of the cohort, back and forth to challenge their thinking and their leadership. The superintendent, the person who takes that role as superintendent, is not a dictator in the Leadership Formation Program. If that person's doing things that would be controlling, that's quickly brought to their attention. And I don't think that's allowed to go on for very long. And I would say the same thing by probably 6 months into the program, if Dennis or Bill or now Polly Crawley or myself would take that role, we're quickly put back into our place as well. I think the instructors are challenged. And so community, you have to function in a community if you're going to be an effective leader, and you have to be able to create that.
Now, Vicki, you're in an internship program, and have you found that you can use some of these things that you've been learning already in your internship program?
Oh, absolutely, and it's amazing when you think about the 5 disciplines that Dennis talked to. You realize when you really have learned them because you start thinking that way, and you start recognizing the way you react with others and just the behaviors of other people. And community is vitally important, and to understand that a leader is not really the person in charge and everybody else follows. A leader is someone who can set the tone for a group of people working together to achieve something. And so it's a very natural transgression from the first-year program into the internship. It's not smooth all the way. I mean, you learn through the challenges along the way, but there's a strong connection. Yeah.
Vicki, we just have about a minute left, and so I don't want to get in a new area, but in relation to what you just said, it's a little bit like medical school or law school in the sense, I don't mean in its structure, but that the first year is so challenging to learn this different process, and then does it become somewhat more manageable, I guess I would use, as you move into your second year?
And I think it's very much like medical school and having the internship. I think traditionally the programs have been you learn all the knowledge and then you go and put it into application. And the way Dennis has it designed is you can do the application while you're learning in an environment that has a lot of challenges, but there's a safety net also.
But there's also, as you're indicating, there's a connecting between all of those. There's not only in your community and your group, but between the theory and the application, the case study, and all of that. Would I be safe to say it's almost like the Renaissance approach of bringing all these components together?
Yeah.
That's what comes to mind
Tony,
as you explain
nice.
the process. Thank you. I've enjoyed very much. I know that Janelle has sharing these with you, our questions and your great thoughts. And I'm inviting you back next week. And ladies and gentlemen that are watching our program, you'll be happy to know that they will be back next week. This is a program from Gonzaga University's Leadership Formation Program. And I think you have found out today that it is very innovative. And we've touched on a lot of important issues. But next week, we're going to even delve into deeper philosophical questions. I have been saving some of those. It's my carrot to you, the viewers, for next week about the internal human spirit, I think, is part of this program. And I would like to invite you to be with us again at that same time next week when we will have these same 3 guests from Gonzaga University's Leadership Formation Program. Please feel free to write to us or contact us about questions you have about this or any other program we have. And until then, please have a very good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station. Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
We are most pleased to welcome you back to our second week, in fact, a 2-week series, dealing with what is called the Leadership Formation Program at Gonzaga University. It is a program for graduate students in the field of education, both for the master's and the doctor's program. We have the same 3 guests back from last week. It was a very exciting, thrilling program for us, and we're going to catch right up on that and move into some more very specific issues of how this program is really innovative in higher education, and I think it's a model that can be copied around the country and even other countries. Welcome Dr. Dennis Connors, who is the director and faculty tutor of the program. It was really fun talking with you last week, Dr. Connors, and I should tell our viewers that at one time you were a colleague here when you were the Dean of Instruction, and you have this great program at Gonzaga, and thanks for spending 2 weeks with us.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it.
Very pleased to welcome back also Vicki Kennedy, who is a teacher and a principal intern at Cheney School District and is a part of this program, is going through it. And welcome back. It was great talking with you last week.
Thank you.
And number 3, I'm very pleased to welcome Mike Schimmel back from last week. He's the Dean of Students at Gonzaga Prep. And Mike, you too were most informative last week, and we are so happy to have you back.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And as always, I'm very pleased to have regular panelist Janelle Burke, and she will start today's questioning.
This is a very interesting program that you have. I'm always interested in things that are happening at Gonzaga University. I graduated from the School of Law there, and it's always interesting to hear what is going on
and
at
both your
GU.
sons graduated from Gonzaga Prep.
That's correct, and one son from Gonzaga University as well. So we have a lot of connection with the university. This is a very interesting program, and I want to ask you, Dennis, about some of the parts of the program. First of all, as I understand it, it is a program that is designed for people who are going to be leaders in the educational field. That is for administrators, principals, superintendents, that kind of individual. So it is definitely a postgraduate type of course. And what is it? What are the components of that course? In other words, what do people do in the first, second, and third years of that course? Just to help our viewers understand what's going to happen.
The first year of the course, Janelle, is what we term the integrative core. They begin as a group and work through, based on their positions, on teams, that first year of the program, beginning in the summer in July, and then fall and spring semester, and then finishing with a retreat in May. They take a series of courses. The university recognizes as courses. It looks the same for the university, and yet the program is taught as a seamless whole that first year. It is simply living in that Mountain Lake School District, working on the problems, getting the kind of knowledge they need, thinking about how they apply that to make decisions, to take action, to further the learning of the kids in that Mountain Lakes District. After the first year, depending on the track that particular candidates would be on, those who would be moving into internships would begin internships, which would take place over the next year. Those who are in master's degrees that will be doing a thesis, move into their research requirements and elective sequence and then work on their thesis. Doctoral candidates move into their coursework, or they could choose to do an internship. It depends on how they want to characterize it. But that's really the way it works. For those who do the master's degree, we recommend, it usually takes about 3 years. Doctoral, it probably would take 4 to 5 years. And then for certification, it's a 2-year program.
Now, Vicki, you're right in the process of being an intern, it's my understanding. And so you've gone through that first part, but you're now in the second part, as I understand that. Yes. And right now, what are you using from the program in your internship?
Oh, actually, I'm using everything from the program. The program the first year is very integrated, and so all of your knowledge comes in a very connected way. And that's just the way the internship works also, is all of the parts are connected, and so truly every aspect of the program is utilized, and it just becomes more operational, I guess is what it is. And one of the strong parts of the program, I think, is the component on reflection. And oftentimes we're so busy doing what we're doing that we don't stop to think about what we're doing. And it's really valuable to have learned the first year how important reflection is, so that as you're going through the internship, you do take the time to stop and think about what just happened and what did I do and what could have been different about it. And so all of the parts are a part of it, and the reflection helps to, I think, keep it on the level that you'd like it to be on.
As I was reading some of the materials, I think they call that slow my thinking down.
Very much so, very much so. And things, knowing yourself is real important, and I find that I'm the type of person, if there's a problem, my tendency is to look for the solution. And that is not always the best way to approach things, and to slow it down and to really analyze that problem and take the time to understand it and understand all the people involved. So slowing your thinking down is critical. Yes.
And Mike, now you're already through the program, and you're now coming back to help as a tutor. Mm-hmm. As part of the program, and so you're out there already applying what you've already learned, and yes, and you have some ideas about leadership now that you are going to take back to your job. What are some of those ideas about leadership?
I should say that for me, I really consider my philosophy just at the very beginning stages on what it means to be an effective leader. Sometimes it's easier to speak to things that I've seen that I would say that are not good leadership. And the real traditional kind of command and control structure where there's real hierarchy, where all the control and the power and the decision making is in the hands of a very small group of people who may influence or impact, hundreds or thousands of people depending on the size of the school that you're working in, or if you're a superintendent, thousands of people. I think that's been fundamentally challenged through the leadership formation program, that idea that leadership is an issue of control and power. So I've questioned that. In my own experiences, I see some of the negative reaction to that. In particular, you don't empower people to be a part of the community they're living in and trying to educate children. If they don't have direct say in what happens and feel that they really do, not just feel, but actually do have a real say in what's going on, I think they disconnect. I think that leads to some of those real traditional us versus them relationships between administrators and teachers. And I think that's something that's being challenged.
So a school becomes a cooperative venture.
Yes, it might maybe it'd be even appropriate to use the word democratic, more democratic in the way the structure is brought about and how power and decision making and authority is distributed.
Now I know Tony's going to want to ask you about
Yeah. My friend Janelle knows this has been coming for a week. As we ended the program last week, I promised our viewers, we have some dedicated viewers that are there every week, and they're always my focus. I never do this program without thinking about our precious viewers. And I do want to get to the heart of something, and Janelle's has laid a beautiful bridge. I am so impressed with the program, and Dennis, you can see that I am from what I've said already. And I think why I like the program so much is 2 or 3 reasons. One is, this is a very long dissertation to my question, but I really see your program as one thinking outside the box, which I really like. I see it a program of courage, because it takes very much courage to think out of the box. It is very insecure to challenge what has been for hundreds of years. Not that there's not great lessons in the traditions that we have, and that's part of the process, but you want to add an addendum. And so I see from your literature, you quote such people from literature as Hamlet when you say, "To thy own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man." Words come to mind all at once about your program. At the top of the list is trust, fairness, caring for others, compassion. Now, where I'm headed with this question is, and I'm going to start with you, Mike, I promised you I would. It seems to me, as one who works in the field of human rights and believes deeply in equality and justice, social justice, and the dignity of a person, that this program is getting at the very heart of what we're all about. I contend that without one tapping one's human spirit, one is drifting through life. I've often said that the human spirit is like a flame, and you can blow cold waves on it and really harm a person, or you can do like this program, you can give it fuel and the flame will burn high, or the human spirit. With that long dissertation, Mike, I would love for you to share with our viewers, and Dennis in particular is one of the founders of this program that you have at Gonzaga. How has this changed you? I know you're on a journey, but really tell us about how you internalize this program. Share with, and I hope this program will be used by some of your future students. And so I'm getting very personal, but I think this is what this program at Gonzaga is about.
Oh, wow, that's a large question that doesn't have a very easy answer for me. When I came into the program, I was jumping through a hoop that I was required to jump through to maintain my status as a vice principal. And so it was really there, really just to satisfy that requirement. And found myself in an experience that was by far and away the best educational experience I've ever had. for me, in many ways, and at the risk of sounding maybe arrogant, what the program helped me do is really clarify my own thinking. I was having many questions in regards to leadership and what I was seeing in the school I was involved with. And so in some ways it was a clarification of things I was experiencing. I'm not answering your question yet, I know. How has it challenged me? How have I grown? I think probably the most important thing it's done for me is give me a vehicle and a means to question all of those things that my culture, that my upbringing, which was a Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, Catholic university upbringing, living in a northwestern isolated community that's not very diverse in a country that's dominating world politics. It allowed me to question all of those things that I just took for granted. And that may sound like I'm adrift, but I don't think I am. I think there's a paradox there. Once you start doing that, then you're open to growth and you're open to seeing other people's perspectives. We talk about listening to answer as opposed to listening to understand. And there's a real fundamental difference there. And I think once you start questioning your own belief system and being open to the fact that maybe somebody else's is as valid, maybe even is more valid than yours, it's much easier to listen to people, to understand, to try to get yourself inside of their shoes. So how have I grown from it? How has it challenged me? Down to my soul, I suppose, would be one answer. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
You have. You certainly have. You started out with saying you were going to deal with certain other aspects, but you got right to the heart of the issue. Vicki, I'm going to ask you the same question with a little bit different approach to it. When I use the word trust, my experiences in dealing with education, dealing with human rights, wherever one is within the universe that we live, it seems to me that one of the greatest obstacles to doing what you're doing in this program, and that's what's exciting about the program, is that oftentimes we do not be as open or helpful or grow as much because of lack of trust. And children, when they're very young, are totally trusting, and they pay a penalty and then they go into a shell. A great writer once said, a book that he wrote about, I Ain't Much Baby Mole of God, a psychologist, that he finds that humans, as they become adults, have a shell and no one gets inside of it. Mm-hmm. So again, this long question, how has this program attacked that problem? And I see in your program among your self-trust, and so would you just respond to my comments?
Well, and I feel very strongly about this. Trust is a very major part of this program, and you don't get it just on day one. It's a program that's very hard and challenging from the beginning, but it is set up so that eventually you can get into risk-taking in the trust. And there are just some community kinds of things that happen in this class. And one of the things is when we first meet for the weekend is we go around the table and everybody is invited to just bring to the table whatever they want to bring to the table. And it doesn't have to be, and usually is not directly related to the course. It's wherever you are in your life that day and issues that you've dealt with, which starts to develop a more personal relationship, I would say. And then by the fact that we are immediately put into groups, I think trust comes from the fact that every challenge that you have in the class, you're not alone. You have tutors that will lead you through, but you also have the people in your administrative team to help you. And Dennis and I have talked about this, and this was a major issue for me, I think, is because I kind of like to be in control of what I'm doing and who I am, and it breaks down those barriers. Mike talks about growth, and it is a tremendous beginning of a growing stage. It is not final by any stretch of the imagination. It challenges a lot of what you believe about yourself, but in a very safe environment. And you're almost invited to break down your personal barriers as you feel comfortable. I mean, different people do it at different levels throughout the program, but there is always that community, that group, to help you and to support you and to understand you. And it is a life-transforming experience, really.
One other question to you, based on what you said. You who are in the program, obviously you are leaders are going to be leaders. A lot of people are going to work for you. That's why you're in the program. But as you break down barriers and as you know yourself better, are you already experiencing that as you go back into your other life, where you are at the Cheney School District or with your family, wherever you are? Are you finding there's some change in how you deal with other people as you know yourself better?
Yes, definitely.
Isn't that at the heart of this program?
It is very much at the heart of the program, and there are just points along the way that just really a person takes to heart, and one Mike mentioned is the fact that it's so easy to listen so that you can respond, and that shift that you need to start listening to understand.
The difference between hearing something and listening.
Absolutely. If there are problems and issues and people not willing to come along, rather than just trying to convince people why you need to come along, and you know, that is not very productive, is to slow down and try to understand where the other person is coming from. What perceptions do they have, and what assumptions are they making, or what's their experience, and try to work together.
Thank you, Vicki.
Okay.
And my final question before I go back to Janelle is to Dennis. Dennis, in ethics and philosophy, there's a statement that I worked on that I like, and I think it's also at the center of your program. To me, ethics means asking the meaning, the value, and the purpose of a policy, a law, a custom. Mm-hmm. Isn't that part of what your program is teaching your students?
Without question. What are we here for? How do we want to operate together? What do we want to create? Is a constant, almost a mantra that's the first year is become clear not only about yourself, but about this virtual school district that you live in, this school that you're responsible for. What is it that you most value as the principal of that school? And of course the question is the larger one in the district. What do we want to create? That becomes a real centering kind of thing. If we become real clear about what we want to create and then say, where are we now, that sets up a tension we talk about. And we can resolve the tension two ways. We can lower our goals and settle for less, or we can begin to really take definite steps and make choices to go this way. Too many times I think people come into administrative programs or think, if we set the policy, that's going to solve all our problems. We go back to what we talked about last week in terms of systems and talk about structure. Policies can be seen as structures that produce certain patterns of behavior, that produce certain events. And if we begin to look at how structure determines behavior, we stop blaming people necessarily and begin to look at the structure. One of the powerful things that both of these individuals and their colleagues do is, in the context of deciding what they're going to do in this district, is to become real cognizant of that and to say, what do we want to create, and what's the right action to take given the current reality that we're in? They cannot help but deal with ethical and moral issues. And by dealing with them, they become better, and they know who they are. They know who they are. It's all related.
I hear you saying, too, that this program in your career will challenge some of the red tape, some of the bureaucracy.
We expect them to do that.
Okay.
Without going too far.
Yeah.
We are expecting these people to be fundamentally different types of administrators, and they will have to. You used the word courage a few minutes ago, and we talk about that word courage, and we break it down, and core means heart, as we well know living here. And these people have to take heart because their job is to give heart to the people they work with. That's what courage is really about. They will have to constantly do that. They will have to do that, and they better know who they are, and they better know what they stand for.
I have to go back to Janelle, but I'll just close by saying that you are challenged to distinguish between needful rules and important rules and those that cannot be justified. That's what I hear you saying. Janelle.
The students who are in your class are, of course, in your program are, of course, already well familiar with academics. By this time, they are successful academicians, if you will. And they are carefully selected. But now you're going a step beyond that. And as I understand it, Dennis, a basic tenet of your program is to know yourself. I feel very strongly that good leaders set the tone for the building, if you will, in the case of a school or a school district, or in the case of a workplace. It's equally important there. The good leaders set good tones. And part of that, I take it you would say, is knowing yourself. Is that correct?
I think that
And can you expound some on how we get to look inward and know ourselves?
kind of to go back to what I said before, in dealing with the case study and the variety of issues in the context that Mike and Vicki have talked about on a team, having to take action, not just intellectualize it, but to connect the academic, the abstract ideas with matters of the heart. And there are, one of the issues right now, Janelle, that this group is facing, the current cohort that Mike is working with us on, is institutional discrimination within a high school. And they have data that they have examined that says there is, people in similar circumstances are treated differently, and they're dumbfounded. How can this be? Once they get over that, what are we going to do? The case and the simulation that they engage in, when they have lawyers come in and say, do you know what you people are doing? The Office of Civil Rights is going to come down and they are going to bring an action, a Title VI action against you. They deal with these ethical, moral issues in themselves and together, and they have to figure out what we're going to do. There's an emotional strand that goes through that. Vicki alluded to it early on. She said, and it's the challenge of trying to accomplish what we, and sometimes not accomplishing. We think the learning is much more powerful and has more effect on them when it doesn't go the way they think it's going to go, or when it hasn't been successful. We don't set them up for failure, but we set, the issues are so real and they are complex that you deal with moral issues, you deal with emotions, and they can experience it. And again, as Vicki and Mike had said, it's in a safe place. We can break it apart after we go through it and say, what were you feeling? What did you think? What did you prepare for? You know, how you did that, and we can and do that in a safe place. And so I think all those components come together. And when that person then takes that first principleship, dollars to donuts, within the first year they're going to say, now I understand. Now I know why they were so insistent, or my colleagues were so insistent that we pay attention to this, because the issue may have a different name and the faces are different, but at some level they're the same things, and I've been here. Now let me think through how I need to act, what I need to think about. That's where I think the real learning will take place. The real learning will occur 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
On the last program, I also mentioned, Mike, one of the things that, one of the other tenets that I believe is that a leader can't lead unless there's someone to follow. And I want you to discuss that a little bit, because I think that we're going to talk about some semantics here. And Vicki, feel free to jump in with Mike too. We're going to talk about a little bit of semantics here about good leaders are people who are secure in themselves and who can get other people to come along with them, if you will, perhaps. But would you like to kind of attack my good leaders need someone to follow?
Again, I'm speaking really from a kind of a maybe young and budding philosophy on leadership, but follow can be deceiving. I think language is actually quite limiting probably in the way we express ourselves, but for me, leadership is creating an environment where you don't have to be the person in charge and have all the power and control, where you don't have to be the person making the decisions. An effective leader knows how to create an environment where people will, within the organization, whether that be a classroom and it's a teacher, whether that be a principal, a vice principal, superintendent, or whether that be a CEO of a company, whether that be in your family. I think it's all the same thing. A good leader can create an environment where they're not the ones who are running like a general, like a, almost like a dictator, an organization. They are creating an environment where people can rise to those positions of leadership, where I can feel secure in not having to be in charge. And I think that's very important, because if people aren't invested deeply in whatever organization that they belong to, whatever community they belong to, they're going to follow you to the degree that they can satisfy the requirements to keep their job. For teachers, I've often felt that education often looks like a feudal state where a classroom is really, and the teacher is the lord over their feudal state, which is their classroom, and there's this feudal lord that's the principal or the superintendent who's in charge of all of these people, but it's very loose, and there's not a real strong commitment always. And I can always close my classroom door, and that's where it really ends. That's where I do my work. I don't think a lot of teachers look outside their classroom door as a place where their thoughts, their views, their feelings have as much say as they should, as much say as they'd like to. I don't know how much they get to create the environment within they work outside their classroom. Obviously, that's one of the most important things they're doing, which is inside their classroom. But for it to be truly successful for kids, as successful as it can, if they're not taking part in the greater running of that school, business, family, whatever it is.
I must interrupt. I'm sorry, the clock has run. It always wins on this program. On behalf of Janelle and our panel, we thank all three of you, congratulate you on this program called the Leadership Formation Program at Gonzaga University. And Dr. Connors, thank you. And I know Dr. William Mester is very much involved with your program. It's been an exciting 2 weeks. One of the reasons we do this program is selfish. That is, we learn from it, and I know our viewers also learn. And we wish you well, and we think the program will spread to other educators around the country. Thank you again.
Tony, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today, and I invite you to be with us again next week at the same time. We will discuss yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.